Today's episode looks back to the future as guest Dr. Rustin Moore of Ohio State shares leadership secrets started long ago in the animal kingdom and how our pets give us lessons on the best boss behavior every day. There are new lessons unfolding too, especially as artificial intelligence continues integrating into the workplace. How can you lead with technology evolving so rapidly? We have a course at the Innovative Leadership Institute to help. It's called AI Mindsets for Leaders, and you can learn about it now on our website at www.bit.ly/AI Mindsets. That's www.bit.ly/A, M, and lowercase INDSETS. AI Mindsets.
Welcome to Innovating Leadership, Co-Creating Our Future, where we help leaders be future ready. I'm your host, Maureen Metcalf, the CEO and founder of the Innovative Leadership Institute. Today, I'm honored to be joined by Dr. Rustin Moore, a nationally recognized veterinary leader and the author of the powerful new book, Unleashing the Bond, Harnessing the Power of Human-Animal Interactions. His work explores the profound and often transformational connection between humans and animals, and today we'll explore how that bond can inform and inspire our leadership. So, Rustin, thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much, Maureen, for having me, and so great to always see you.
Human-animal bond is an interesting and unusual topic to be talking about on a leadership podcast. How does leadership integrate with your work on the human-animal bond, and what can our leaders think about potentially differently?
Yeah, so I think the human-animal bond, or just interacting with animals, really teaches us some of the most essential qualities of effective leadership in my mind. And if you study the animal kingdom, different species and different breeds and things, they actually interact differently and their leadership comes across differently. And just like there's no one type of leadership that is the only way it can be effective, if you look across that in the animal kingdom, you can see how different animals lead in different ways. Some of those qualities that come out are the demonstration of empathy, being present, having trust or respect, and also authenticity. I think that's something that's really important. And animals don't respond to titles. They're not leading because they're the president or the dean or the whatever. Much of it is about how they create a level of calmness, yet energy, and create these environments of psychological safety for their animals that they're leading. And I think a lot of that really stems from a way of being compassionate and attuned with the animals around them and looking out for their interests. And there is a biochemical reason for this. When we interact with animals, the science which suggests and show that we are calmed by the reduction of cortisol, the stress hormone that is released in our bodies. But we also have an increase in oxytocin, which is a connecting love or other type of hormone, and that's the effect it has. And so some of those same things happen in animals to animals, or happens in animals while we're interacting with them. There's a biochemical explanation for why some of these things happen. And it's really, I think, about emotional awareness, physiological balance, and then having those authentic relationships, whether it's in animals or whether it's in people, or in some cases between animals and people. And a lot of that goes back to, if you think about people who train animals, train dogs, etc., a lot of those same principles apply.
If I were to learn from my dog, who is amazingly present and patient with me, my dog always loves me, kind of no matter what stupid thing I've done during the day. If I'm the leader of a pack, I'm also in some ways holding my pack accountable so they don't get killed.
I completely agree with everything you said, and I would add one thing to that. And I think the other thing, and what you said about your dog is steady regardless of what you do. When leaders can be steady despite things that pop up and could stress people out, it provides a calming presence for those around them, just like your dog does with you.
So it's reduced cortisol, increased oxytocin when things are stressful. If you are calm,
Create that environment where it's safe Everybody can be authentic. There's no judgment. And we address whatever this crisis is that has come up together, because the best solutions are going to come from a variety of opinions.
How do you help your colleagues take on the behaviors of the best in the animal kingdom?
This is a new space for me in terms of really trying to think about and put into practice what we do. But I think it's aligned with a lot of the things that I've learned as a leader that I think are innate or inherent in effective leadership. It's about being present. And when I say present, that doesn't just mean in the room, but I'm actually listening and I'm taking in what someone is saying, and I'm not waiting to talk. I'm waiting to learn and internalize that. And I think it's about having that empathy, not that we can know exactly how they are feeling or experiencing it, but we can at least acknowledge that we understand this is a difficult time. Don't know exactly how this is impacting you, but let's work through it together. The other big part is around trust. How do we build that trust so that we can be authentic and not feel vulnerable, or so vulnerable that we can't express what we really want to express in these times that could be really difficult or courageous conversations? Going back to your example, it's really creating a container or a crucible where we can do all those things so that we can support one another and ultimately have the organization thrive under circumstances that otherwise could be ones that might cause the organization to go off the rails.
One of the things I wonder, how do you help take again a behavior from the animal kingdom about creating a positive work environment is the responsibility of all of us, not just of the pack leader?
But I guess I would use two examples of animal species where that's very apparent. One are ants and one are bees. They have defined roles. They get in line. It's about teamwork. Yes, there's leadership, but there's teamwork. That's what it takes in an effective organization. Yes, like if we're going to create a culture where we can all thrive and the organization is going to maintain its vitality and vibrancy, it takes everybody to do that. One person, the leader, can't do it and can't be solely held responsible for it. Those are things that I think are really important. And I think the other pieces around this is that if we think about other ways that leaders can be successful, but also organizations or teams, part of that's also around resiliency. If we think about what leads to resiliency, it's not control, it's connection. Connection between individuals, humans, or whether it's among the animal species. And just like your dog and your neighbor's dog, yeah, they probably snipe and they probably do other things, yet they are working out their boundaries. I was just visiting a friend of mine in my hometown last weekend, and I took one of my dogs with me, and she has two dogs, and they'd never met before. Watching them inside her house, which is her dog's turf, and watching them how they barked and growled and other things, didn't bite. You saw them working out their differences. And yes, there became probably some sort of hierarchy, but really it was about setting boundaries. And then they kept testing each other. That happens among people and organizations. And so what I would encourage people to do if they have animals, or even if they don't and they're around other animals, watch the behaviors of animals and how they interact, whether it's with animals they know or animals they don't know.
It's an interesting point about boundaries because we as humans are fairly protective of our boundaries and get angry when people overstep. And yet it's a natural process of give and take. And yet we live in a world of fences and legal boundaries. As we watch humans, the dynamic, even in leadership roles, there are places where I lead my team and my team clearly leads me on other things. There's just stuff I don't know as well. And so those boundaries in our organization are pretty permeable.
It reminds me of two things. One, going back to this experience I had this past weekend with these two dogs. One was a female, one was a male. They were litter mates, a couple years older than my dog. And the two males, my dog and one of theirs, were the ones that were testing each other and working things out. But the female, actually, when they would get a little too rowdy, she would insert herself and break it up. Maureen, we have a mutual friend, and his dog, Simon, who is no longer alive, but back when they would go to the park and other dogs would get in fights or start quarreling, Simon would step in and just break it up. He wouldn't like growl or bite or any of that stuff. He just intervened. And so I think that's an example of something that we could consider, not that we jump in and go like this and say, break it up, guys, but it's a way to redirect a conversation or say, well, I heard so-and-so say this. I didn't really hear him attack you or judge you or whatever. So I think there's some lessons there that are relevant.
As I listen to you, I think of a group of clients. We skied together. So also outside of work, very aggressive, very competitive. You get out on the slopes and you go as hard as you can and you want to win. There are other settings in a business environment that level of competition isn't supportive of your colleagues. We as humans get to bounce between contexts, and remembering that the predatory behavior of competitive athletics is not as useful in the office.
Animals that might sometimes think about, okay, that's the predator and this is the prey, might actually, in certain situations, get along just fine, depending on the environment, the context, etc. And also, you said something that made me think of this earlier is I find myself in situational leadership and situational followership all the time. You mentioned it about people you work with that you don't know that much about and you take their advice and follow them. I do that every day. And it's not just hierarchical. It's somebody that might be 3 levels down on a hierarchical chart might be leading whatever it is, and I'm following them because they're the content expert. And so I think those are some really important things that, again, go back to the animal kingdom.
We've brushed against the topic of well-being and resilience. Having pets and that human-animal bond is such a crucial option for humans to maintain their well-being. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I think about well-being of individuals or teams as workload and workplace. Workplace being the culture, the environment, etc. Workload is just the volume of work. And trying to address those. And workload, sometimes we can actually manage. Workplace is a little more challenging because there's a lot of different people and personalities involved there. I don't know that there was anybody I interviewed that didn't talk about how much their pet kept them grounded. They'd walk in the door after a hard day's of work, and I can say this because my dogs do this. I can walk in and they'll be jumping and acting like they haven't seen me in a week and I've been gone an hour. Although I do think they do have a sense of time. I came home last evening after being gone 2.5 days. It's like really, really intense. Whether they really are happy to see you or not, they make you feel like they are. That leads to a rush of oxytocin, a rush of dopamine and serotonin, all feel-good things that lower blood pressure and other physiological things. And so I do think people who have pets, many times that can be a pop-off valve for them or help them de-stress after a day. There are pet-friendly and pet-inclusive workplaces where they do seem to have more of a levelness to the work environment. And more companies are becoming pet inclusive or pet friendly. The other thing I heard from people was, again, I go back to the word steadiness. I come home, my dog is steady, or my cat. Mine have moods here and there, but for the most part, they're very steady in how they respond to you and how they greet you and how they support you. And the other word I heard a couple times, which I'd never heard before, which sent me down this other tangent looking into this, was pets are democratizers. And what they meant by that was a pet does not care if you're rich, if you're a Republican, a Democrat, you're homeless, you're gay, you're whatever it is. They see you for who you are. And as long as you treat them well, you build trust with them. They're loyal. There's unconditional love. To me, I was just thinking of that differently after they said they're democratizers. I said, well, explain that a little further. That's sort of what I took away from it.
I come back to leaders. What do we do so that our employees feel like we're democratizers? That we don't care if they're old or young, slim or overweight. We value them for their contribution, and especially in a time where we are so politically divided, how do we as leaders play that democratizer role?
To me, it is about a leader demonstrating they value people from all backgrounds, all experiences. They value all ideas and input. They may make they would need to make a decision, and it may not jive with certain people's ideas, but at least they've authentically been listened to. It's about creating that place where you feel safe in expressing your opinion. You feel like you belong there and that you contribute something. I've explained today what I would have said before as we need to create a diverse and inclusive workplace, blah, blah, blah. But I didn't use any of those words. We create a place where everybody feels they can be respected for their opinions. They're going to be trusted. They're going to be valued. They feel like they're comfortable. They're safe. It's really unfortunate to me that we have basically politicized DEI for something that it wasn't. It's really about supporting everyone and giving everyone an opportunity to contribute and be successful and thrive.
I know that has been, in your role as dean, something that's been crucial to you, no matter what words you stick to it.
Again, we can take a lesson from Mother Nature. If we're talking about biodiversity, if we left Mother Nature alone, the world from an animal, plant, etc., would heal and thrive. It's when we intervene, and we intervene with our prejudices, our biases, our exclusion of people. If we go back to the animal kingdom and we look at biodiversity, there's predators and there's prey. The balance, the homeostasis of the world from the standpoint of that is balanced. We as humans and leaders could really learn a lot from looking at that. Think about Chernobyl. That was a man-made thing. Although it's taken decades, that ecosystem is starting to recover from a biological perspective, plants, animals, etc. Regardless of what you think about climate change and other things, if we look at the animal kingdom and Mother Nature, we can learn a lot of lessons that are applicable to leadership and decision making that can heal an organization, heal a school, etc.
It seems like we have lost sight of the importance of considering the ecosystem and the arc of time, and that people around us that we're working with are often experiencing a range of events, traumas, and we aren't being very effective at compassion. And I think, again, back to the pack of dogs, that there is both a herding, bringing people along, and renegotiating of boundaries. When you're limping, we help you. When you're able to run again, we expect you to run, not limp. With humans, I don't know that we have a mechanism to think about more of an ecosystem perspective.
One of the things I think that animals, maybe more so than people, forgive and forget. None of us are perfect. We're all going to make mistakes. Some people are more or less forgiving than others. There's a place we could insert some lessons from animals. But in book 2, which comes out in January, there's a couple of chapters where I visited 2 prisons in Ohio, and I was interviewing inmates, and these were all male prisoners, some in for life for various reasons. And I was interviewing them because these were men who had applied for, been trained, accepted into the programs where they would train or rehabilitate animals. They would either train dogs to become service animals, like autism support or others. They would train dogs that were sort of unruly from the local shelter and were unadoptable to become adoptable animals. And they would also nurture orphan wildlife, baby bunnies and raccoons and opossums, and then they would be released. My grandmother was murdered when I was in the 7th grade. And for a long time, I really would have a hard time forgiving such an individual. When I went in and met with those prisoners, if I had not been in that prison and known that I had driven there and let through the door and I was interviewing them at a coffee shop, I would not have known they had done egregious things. Almost all of them in some way or the other said, I was rehabilitated more than the dogs I rehabilitated, or I was X, Y, and Z more than I did for the baby bunnies. These were hardened criminals, but yet they were humans. I don't know. I was really touched by those interviews. One of them, actually, the second prison I visited, I was in a little office that they put me in, and they were bringing in prisoner one at a time. And one guy came in. He looked about my age, maybe a little older, thinner, about my height. And as he walked through the door, he had this big grin on his face. And he said, "When I heard you were coming here, I so hoped I'd get to meet you." And I'm thinking, do we know each other? And I said, "Well, why is that, sir?" And he said, "Because my daughter graduated from your college just a few years ago." And I'm like, "Oh, who's your daughter?" And he told me, and I said, "Oh, I know her. She's from my home state of West Virginia." Well, it turns out this guy grew up 20 miles from where I grew up. You could just see how that what he described as when he became part of this dog program, how it changed his life. It gave him purpose. It gave him meaning. He felt valued. If we could learn from people and animals like that, that our lives, for the most part, our lives are pretty good compared to many people in the world. Let's don't forget that and learn how animals interact and also interact and brighten the lives and the days of people.
I want to go back to well-being. The challenges so many people are facing right now. How do we amplify the joy we get from our pets? How do I bring that sense of steadiness and peace? How do I bring that to work?
One of the things that we can all do is every morning before we head out the door, look in the mirror and say, what am I going to do today to make it a better place? It's pretty simple. Be kind. If you're kind to somebody, you're going to benefit, and so are they. Not unlike interacting with an animal, you're going to have the release of oxytocin or dopamine because you're doing something kind. It could be simply paying for someone's Starbucks in front of you, or it could just be being really nice to the attendant who's taking your order, or it could be holding a door. It doesn't have to cost anything. It can be very inexpensive and very effective, and actually be the one thing that day that changes how that person's day goes.
As we think about who we are as leaders and the legacy we leave as a leader, creating an environment where I want to say it's like a good chili or something.
Gumbo.
Gumbo, okay. That you put in a bunch of ingredients that are very different. Sausage and shrimp and spices. It becomes brilliant because of the mashing together, the cooking and simmering that allows each of those unique flavors to both surface and amplify others.
And infiltrate into others. It's just like doing a shrimp boil and you put them in there, but you have corn and you have whole potatoes. But when you eat the corn and potatoes, you get that flavor of that whole boil.
Beautiful. So how as leaders do we create the environment where not we boil them like shrimp and potatoes, but where we create the context that allows for each to simmer together and also bring out their unique flavor?
Well, and it's like 1 + 1 = 3. What I hope people will take away from this is that having an animal or interacting with an animal on a regular basis can help you be steady, kind, compassionate, empathetic, because that animal is helping you become that person. When you leave the home that day, hopefully you have those characteristics with you that you can apply and remind yourself and have a positive impact on other people. A lot of our greatest world leaders over time had a real, authentic relationship with animals, whether it's former presidents like Lincoln, like Roosevelt, Margaret Thatcher, Queen Elizabeth, you name it. Many of them have had a relationship with animals that I think did impact their leadership.
My question to our listeners then is, how do you leverage your relationship with your pet, if you have one, to build that steadiness and kindness and presence and amplify it further in your leadership? So, Rustin, how would people learn more about your book and maybe your work at OSU?
My debut book, Unleashing the Bond, Harnessing the Power of Human-Animal Interactions, is available on Amazon. And my second book, which is due out in January, which is called Unlocking the Bond, The Power and Paradox of Human-Animal Interactions, will be out on Amazon as well. The work I do here at the College of Veterinary Medicine is academic leadership and other things. I do believe I have grown as a leader because of the animals in my life, and particularly my 3 dogs, which, as you know, Maureen, I got in the fall of 2014, which was about a year before I became the dean. I've been through some challenging times as dean, including we had a student die by suicide right after I became dean, and through other personal things and professional. Those dogs have been a rock for me at home. It also made me reprioritize my life. I can't stay at work till 11 o'clock at night. I have to go home. I have to feed the dogs. I have to take them out, which is a healthy habit to develop. Those are a little bit about me. I also have a website, just rustinmooredvm.com.
And Moore is spelled Moore.
Yeah, Rustin, Rustin, Moore, Moore, DVM, drveterinarymedicine.com.
Thank you. It is always a pleasure to catch up with you and share our conversation with listeners. And to our listeners, thank you for coming along for the journey with Rustin and I. Please like the podcast, share it with others, and importantly, consider your bond with the pets in your world and how do those amplify your ability to lead more effectively.
Thank you so much, Maureen, for having me, and always great to see you.
Thank you. Likewise.